Hi guys at home. Are you a lawyer?
I'm a lawyer, yes, but I actually help. I work with
Okay, are we ready? Okay, we're live. Okay, so thank you very much, Ronnie and Nicole, for joining me. And we're going to talk about anonymity, privacy, various kinds of regulation, and how that impacts Web3, and what kind of issues we can possibly deal with as investors or as project founders in the near future. And basically, instead of just having other founders to discuss this, we thought it would be better to actually have some industry experts who are more impartial. They're more kind of this is their niche, this is their livelihood, and they can see things from a more neutral perspective. Because a lot of people in the Web3 space are quite idealistic about things, and they want decentralization, and they want anonymity, and they want privacy. But at the same time, we need to make sure that these things are actually feasible, and to what extent they're feasible and desirable, and what we have to do from an investor perspective, what we need to know. This is a topic that comes up quite a lot with our community. So we thought it'd be good to get some thought leaders, some real experts in the field to discuss this with us. So, Ron, would you like to introduce yourself to the community?
Nice to meet you, all of you. My name is Ronnie Benzoff. I am an attorney as a professor specialized in cyber law. So I deal with data protection, artificial intelligence, more or less around 25 years. So it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, hi both. Thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Nicole Fortunato. I'm a lawyer, and I mostly focus my areas of expertise are privacy as well, but also in blockchain and everything related to Web3 issues. I work in Wesley Town in Lisbon, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much for joining us. We're quite lucky to be able to have two people who are experts in the specific niche of Web3 and also how that relates to privacy and regulatory issues around that in particular. So I suppose I'm just going to jump in and kind of give our perspective from Jerry's point of view. So we are, as I mentioned earlier, quite ideologically geared towards decentralization and anonymity and privacy and things like that. But at the same time, we are running a business, so we need to make sure that we can stay on the right side of legal matters, that we can anticipate further legal issues in the future and stakes that we have to navigate in the future. So it's always good for us to be able to talk to experts, impartial experts like yourselves. We released a blog post about privacy last week, I believe, which I'll link in the chat later on in case anybody hasn't read it. But this is a great opportunity for us to kind of pick your brains and see what you think is coming up in the near future with regards to privacy, anonymity, regulation, and Web3. So, Nicole, I might ask you first, do you see an increased level of government involvement or even third sector involvement in regulating the privacy and independence aspects of crypto in the near short term and medium term?
Yes, I believe it has to happen. Okay, so of course the crypto world started in like the geek world, or for some people that were feeling familiarized with the Web3 and the way blockchain works. But I believe that in order for crypto world to come to mainstream, you need to gain trust. And for consumers and regular consumers, you only gain that trust if you have some sort of regulation behind that will help consumers to trust. First, the main challenge now is to ensure that we have the right laws. From my perspective, having the industry involved with governments and with authorities with the right laws is absolutely indispensable.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Yeah, Ronnie, do you see a similar situation?
Yeah, I think personal data it's a fundamental right, so the people know about that nowadays. I agree that the big issue that we are discussing here is about the empowerment of the data subject of the users around the data. If the data is the new oil, so I my needs to control my own data. And I think in the last decades, probably we saw big events as Snowden case, as Cambridge Analytica case that bring new laws as general data protection regulation, and in Brazil we have also our GDPR, the LGPD, the CPD, that bring the informational self-determination to the owner. That is us. I think this is the big picture. Yeah. Yeah, because from those of us working on projects, we believe that, you know, this is why, as you explained, one of the reasons that blockchain came about, because people in our industry, we often believe that the government and private companies will never actually give people true sovereignty of their own data.
And do people want that?
That's the question. Yeah, so that's the question. So that's what I was going to ask. Do you see any downsides? Because you mentioned that in order for things to go mainstream, there needs to be more confidence and more trust. But from our perspective, often we prefer to. So, me personally, I don't keep any of my coins in on Coinbase or wherever. I'm very privacy is very important to me, but to other people that they don't take it that seriously. So, do you think that there's any downsides to what is the trade-off between increasing the government's involvement with these things and decentralization? Do you think that it's maybe betraying the vision of crypto to involve government so much?
Well, let me put you on this way. People usually want someone to be liable. That's the point. That is why it is very idyllic, the part, and I do believe that we do need some decentralization. The main problem for me is solving the liability issue that you have along with decentralization. Because, for example, if you are in a play-to-earn game, which is blockchain-based, you are a gamer. You don't want to be liable for the losses of the game before other gamers, but that's what will happen if you are in a fully decentralized mode.
Yeah.
So you cannot have the juice and
keep the apples.
Keep the apples as well. You need to choose, and I'm not sure consumers are ready for really being empowered with the capacity to decide and to take decisions and life and responsibilities around the crypto world. But you mentioned a lot of times governments, but from my European perspective, that governments are reacting to a digital colonialism from the gatekeepers. You know, and of course we have Web3, we have governments in the EU, and we have the gatekeepers like Facebook, Google, etc., which is mostly the guys that Web3 tries to step away. But the point is that if Web3 is not able to do that, governments somehow need to put some control in private companies like these gatekeepers. That's what I think Europe is now trying to do with the TSA and the DMA.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And Ronnie, do you think as well? Where do you see? Because as Nicole mentioned, it's not just government and business. There's more or less three.
It's a triangle.
There's a triangle more than there's like decentralization, but then on the centralized side, it could be corporate or government.
I agree with you, Claudia, and I bring another perspective that if in the Web3, the owner of data is the subject, but the companies need the data to do many things as commerce, as predictive analysis in the health issue, and credit score, and everything was built with data. Machine learning needs data, so I think we need a big step about education and conscientization and trust, because the companies need the data to build a big issue involving benefits to the user. So how the Web3 will make this conscientization about the necessity of data to produce good service, good issues for the users.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note, I mean, we have a lot of very enthusiastic entrepreneurs in our community who will be listening. And one question that I was going to ask is, do you think that there'll be business opportunities for people if there's an increased role and partnership between, as you mentioned, Nicole, governments and platforms trying to move forward together? Do you think there'll be new business opportunities for new startups to possibly fulfill a role in this ecosystem?
I think because nowadays we have new types of regulation that put together the government and the companies. There's co-regulation, as sandbox regulatory. So I think nowadays the regulation is more modern and puts these initiatives together. And this is very good as we have in the General Data Protection Regulation, as an example.
The horse law, that's what I usually call the GDPR, because it's the law that applies to everything, and nowadays it's spread worldwide. It started in Europe, and then you have a lot about the new businesses. I do believe that if, apart from a self-regulation scheme that most of the founders, crypto founders, are finding now, we are now totally, we are absolutely confused about how to tackle all the crypto issues with law. And for example, I want to create a DAO, but I need a legal wrapper, otherwise I won't be able to make the DAO work with the real world. I think that, as I said to you at the beginning, we need a strong cooperation without egos, which is something very human. It needs to disappear. Without egos between authorities, and that's the only way to make things happen in realistic and affordable and good way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think I was going to ask, like, just in terms of the advice that you would give, because we have people in the community now, and they have two legal experts who probably you can get some free decentralized legal advice now. If you were speaking to someone, a friend of yours who was starting up a Web3 startup, from your legal expertise, what areas would you say are those that they should, if they were trying to scale a small project, what areas would be the most important to keep an eye out for? Should they involve legal professionals early? Should they avoid certain practices? Is there any red flags or pitfalls that you see that you would recommend to someone, let's say, was myself, and I'm starting a new Web3 project? Is there any areas that you think, or industries that maybe people should avoid because it's too murky and it's too mysterious? Just what kind of information would you give the guys at home in terms of advice? Is there anything from a legal perspective you'd say?
I think most important thing is put together the programmers with the ethics, with the legals, and build together a complete solution. I think that the interdisciplinarity of the science is important to build the best solution.
Okay. So would you advocate for people to get a legal team on board early?
I am a company lawyer, so I apply the security measures, the legal security measures for the companies to build the big projects involving crypto, involving metaverse, involving AI. So it's important, this type of security for this type of
that's quite interesting.
Okay, so first advice, look at the startup series Netflix. You can get there the idea of everything that could go wrong if you don't have at least a friend that's a lawyer as a friend. Okay. No, I'm joking. But I would say two things for crypto. First, don't expect a binary solution. There's no, apart from very small jurisdictions in the world, everything related to crypto in Europe. Now you will have the NICA, which of course will bring some clarity of how things will work in Europe around some crypto assets, not all. For example, NFTs are excluded from that. So don't expect binary answers from lawyers. If you don't have a legal framework currently or legal issues related to crypto, and be prepared to take this and assume liability. Because from my experience, what happens the most is that they are trying to get the binary solution with no risk.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to a totally new industry, there's no way you can get in there. You know, Mark Zuckerberg took his risk when he built up Facebook, and this happened with the big founders of the gatekeepers of Web2. So you need to be prepared to take risks. And of course, we will try to support you the best we can. And I'm not the type of lawyer that thinks that you need a full compliance plan if you are just a founder. But there are some small issues like IP, data protection that you should avoid since the beginning.
That's very interesting. So on that note, I was going to finish with one question. We're in Lisbon at the moment, and it's really been a great week so far. Portugal, as you mentioned, has been an attractive place for years for people to come to. I don't know how that's going to shake out in the near future when they, as we discussed, kind of revamp and retune their legal framework. But is there any areas, any jurisdictions that you think would be better for Web3 startups from a legal perspective, from a privacy perspective, in the future, in the next few years? Is there anywhere that you think is really up and coming? Whether it's in Lisbon itself, or maybe it's in somewhere in the States, or maybe it's Brazil. Is there anything that any areas that you think people should keep an eye on?
I think that we are seeing here in transition the Web to Web3.
Yeah.
And we have in Brazil a good experience involving physiological laws.
Okay.
So I think, and sandbox regulatory laws and co-regulation, I think the regulatory issue needs to be very careful about the regulation that would show the technology as well.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Well, from my opinion, I think as a founder, you should think of three criteria: the resources of that jurisdiction, the price of energy, because that's an important question. It's at least if you are still looking for big machines that require a lot of electricity. And now I forgot the third one. Oh, and the resources, the price of energy, and the regulatory landscape. For example, we all know that the United States are not welcoming crypto investors. And we do know that China, for example, and some East countries would be perfect because they have very low costs of energy. But the truth is that Europe, in this point in particular, looking at the regulatory framework, we are taking steps towards the legalization or to make crypto happen. The MIGA is a very good example. In particular, Portugal, well, it's most of the main advantage you have with the crypto world is that you can work remotely everywhere. And the truth is that we have a reasonable tax regime. Resources are not hugely expensive. I cannot say the same about energy because it's getting more and more expensive. And we have a nice coast and sun weather. And I think those are also the nice qualities that we have. And of course, we have the good fact of being a European country.
Yeah.
You know, so it also brings you, and the non-resident tax regime, which is very interesting and very attractive for the founders.
Yeah, that's very true. Listen, that was very interesting. I think everyone in our community will be. I think there's something there for everyone. In terms of all the things that you can think about from a conceptual perspective or from a practical perspective, like we discussed at the end. But I really appreciate that you joined us. I just thought maybe if there's a couple of minutes at the end, you'd like to tell us a bit more about what you guys want to do, if there's any kind of services or any kind of things you'd like to promote, or now that you have everybody's attention.
Well, from my side, maybe I should promote a little meeting Genesis, which is a group of our law firm that is mainly focused in venture capital and founders. So it's a group that provides you with the high-level service that my law firm typically traditional provides, but considering, of course, the founders' landscape, you know, the affordable fees, the growth, the pace, which is very different for a founder compared to a traditional company. They want fast answers, they want binary answer. And this group is mostly focused in both to investors and to founders. founders to provide you with this service. This service.
Yeah. It's very useful.
Yes, it's a
It's more tailor made and
exactly
packaged.
service tailor-made service. That was the word I was looking for, and they are really focused in this particular like founders and crypto. Of course, we do have a lot of crypto founders that due to the media effort of networking.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So what we're going to do is just to mention we're going to list all the links to the different projects and the things that are being done. We're going to list them in the description of the YouTube video and on our tweets, promotional tweets. We're going to tweet out the recap of this video. So that's very interesting. And we might even look into it ourselves, Jerry. It sounds like a really promising kind of. And yeah, Taylor is really what
it's really tailored. You cannot imagine. You know, the coordinator, he is the founder. I told him already. He's the founder.
Yeah.
Also, the firm cannot understand what he says because he speaks founder's language, which is a totally different language from a lawyer. You know,
It's very cool.
Yeah. Buddy, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Yes, thank you so much. We are a law firm in Brazil. We are pioneer in Brazil in tech law. Nowadays, thanks God, we are more than 1,000 people working just with tech law. So we are a full service in tech law. So we work with crypto, metaverse, privacy, a lot, and new issues about innovation and technology. So it's a big pleasure.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes after the live stream, and we'll get your input on what kind of things we want to tweet out. So we'll actually thank you all for joining us. I think we got a few attendees on YouTube, between YouTube and our Telegram. We're really looking to be able to have such leading experts. We're able to get them together today. I think everybody enjoyed it. They were looking forward to it at home. And we'll keep you guys updated in terms of how we're getting on. And maybe in the future as well, we can ask you guys we do our regular live streams on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday we do it by conference call. So maybe in a few months when we see how things have changed in the regulatory landscape, I'm sure the community will be absolutely delighted to have you guys join us again. Maybe tell us, keep us up to date as to how things are going. So thank you very much for joining us at home.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you later. John, if you can just wrap up the live stream there, and I'll be in touch with you in a second.